Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Spill the Tea with Tommy D. I'm going to actually continue my, kind of do like a little series with these Adagio Teas, because I recently got a few different flavors, so I'm going to continue. Last week we did the Rooibos Vanilla Chai from Adagio, and this week we are going to do a Pu-erh Hazelberry. So this is a flavored Pu-erh tea. So I have it right here. It is a Pu-erh tea. It has cocoa nibs in it, strawberries, and cream and hazelnut flavor in it. So I'm really excited because I really love Pu-erh teas. So we're going to talk about Pu-erh tea. So Pu-erh tea is a special kind of black tea. It's actually the only tea in Chinese culture. They actually refer to regular black tea, like a golden monkey or something like that. They refer to it actually as red tea because when you brew the tea, it actually will yield kind of more of a reddish brown color. But Pu-erh tea is the one tea that they actually call black tea because when you brew a Pu-erh tea, it actually is much darker than a traditional red tea. So this actually raised a bit of a quarrel I had with a game called Jackbox. Jackbox is like an online game you play with your friends. It's on Steam. And there was a trivia. And one of the trivia questions was which one of these teas is not an actual tea? And they had green, white, black, and red. And I was like, interesting. So I chose the black one because I was like, maybe they think, because the black tea, red tea. It was the wrong answer. So this just short little part goes out to Jackbox TV. You guys got to get your facts straight. Either figure out a better way to phrase that question. Like, don't use yellow tea because yellow tea also exists. So you're going to have to use something way out of left field, like blue tea or something. I don't know. But if this comes along, I'm just letting you know you got to fix that question because if a Chinese person or someone who knows more traditional about that sees that, they're going to say, oh, red tea. Red tea is black tea. So get your shit together. Anyway, so what makes a Pu-erh tea different from a traditional black tea is just like a regular black tea, it is 100% oxidized, and then they do like a pan firing to stop the oxidation process, to cure it afterwards. So then what's special about Pu-erh teas is after the tea is completely oxidized, they actually take the tea and they store it traditionally. So there's two types of tea. There's two types of Pu-erh. There's a raw Pu-erh. So a raw Pu-erh means they take the tea leaves and they leave it in a naturally humid, warm, but naturally ventilated area, usually like some sort of a cave of some sort. And then this tea will actually sit there. And because of the humidity, the tea will actually ferment. So it creates a much different flavor. It creates a lot of good nutrients. It's supposed to be very healthy for you. But it is the only tea that gets better with age. So the longer it ages, the better it gets. This distinct flavor, though, because of its like fermentation, it actually has a very like earthy, almost mushroomy scent to it. So the longer it sits, the actually more mushroomy it gets. So like a really long Pu-erh will have like a bit of a stank to it, and it's actually like really interesting. The one that I'm used, the ones that I do don't really have that extremeness to it, but some people do like that. And then the raw Pu-erh will actually be a little bit greener and have a little bit more of a vegetal taste than the other version, which is a cooked Pu-erh. So for raw Pu-erh, they let it sit for at least a year. I've had 20-year aged Pu-erh. I've had different types. So a raw Pu-erh is what they do is they kind of accelerate this process, kind of not naturally. Like I said, in raw Pu-erh, they usually do it in like a cave. So this, for cooked Pu-erh, they put it in like a room, and they just make the room really humid. And they have a natural ventilation, not a natural, they have like a regular ventilation system, and then it pretty much mimics the process in about 40 days instead of the year or longer. The difference between raw and cooked, the cooked Pu-erh is going to be much darker. So this one that we're doing today, most likely a cooked Pu-erh because the tea leaves are very, very, very dark. And then the cooked Pu-erh has a little bit more of a smoother, richer taste. It is very good. The other thing that really I like about Pu-erh Caffeine content really juices you up. One time, my friend and I were playing just some games, and like we were just hammering some Pu-erh tea back, and we got pretty jacked up. So it was pretty fun. So if you kind of person that, this is definitely the type of tea that you would want a like a coffee drinker would definitely get into because of the dark, rich flavor, high in caffeine. So it was really enjoyable. But I thought that the room thing was kind of interesting, like for the cooked Pu-erh. It's almost like they put it in like a steam room, like some weird, I don't know, bath. No, that's weird. I don't know why I would say that. Anyway, so like I said, this has got, so we got our raw Pu-erh, we got our cooked Pu-erh. So this one actually, so for brewing, it says 1 teaspoon per cup. So just to clarify, everyone's aware, when it says 1 teaspoon per cup, none of our cups at home are 8 ounces. Very rarely do you see an 8-ounce cup. So make sure that you're using the right scoops per ounces. So the cup I'm using, like I said, it's about 14-ounce cup. So I'm going to do about 1.5 teaspoons of this tea. And then this. So let's see it that way. I'll show it this way. Put my little picture here so everyone can see. I can see the cocoa nibs. I can see the strawberry pieces. Also, just a quick thing with loose leaf tea. So all tea in general, 0 calories. If you're just brewing it plain, obviously if you put milk and sugar in it, that's going to be a different story. All tea, though, traditionally is 0 calories. The only time you would get like a trace amount of calories is something in this instance where it actually has bits of chocolate in it. So some tea have a lot, if depending on the flavor you're doing, but obviously that chocolate's going to melt in the water and that's going to use some calories. So there's just something to keep in mind with if you're fasting or something like that. The other quick point I wanted to just address. So this one is 212 boiling water. That black tea is sturdy, we know that. And this one's going to sit for 5 minutes. So the one thing you do want to know is if you're doing more than 1 serving, you don't have to, increasing the time stays the same. So like if I was brewing, whether I'm doing this in a 16-ounce mug or a 40-ounce mug, the only thing that's going to change there is the tea. So you're just going to be doing, more than 2 teaspoons. If it's 16 ounce, you do 2 teaspoons. If it's 8 ounce, you do 1 teaspoon. But the 5 minutes stays the same. The one thing that can get a little finicky, so brewing tea is actually mostly based off ratios. So there's different methods to brewing tea. For example, the one time that you can change, there's a method, Chinese method called the Gong Fu method. And what this is you use more tea and shorter steep times because each steep you do when you're doing multiple infusions with a tea, they refer to as like the layers of the tea. So each steep is going to have slightly different flavors. Your first one might be, if it's like, if it's loose, it might just be a little bolder. Then it gets a little lighter, but it might have different nuances to it. So for example, if I wanted to brew, say I was going to drink like 6 cups of this Pu-erh tea, I could put 4 teaspoons in here and then do like 2.5 minutes. It gets a little finicky like that, and this is about as mathy as I can get. I'm not very good with this. The method that you also can use is like a more modernized method. This one's very, when they do it on the tea, when you buy tea, it's based off of, obviously, more of a traditional, more of a standard method. But then there's I believe it's called like an American method or a modern method where you would actually use less tea. So I could technically do like 1 teaspoon and let it sit for like 10 minutes. But you don't always get the best flavor with that, and that's just something to keep in mind. It does work really well for like a sencha, like that sencha green tea. Say you're only going to have 1 cup, and you don't want to, you can do 1 teaspoon for like 2 minutes, and you'll get a decent cup out of that. But some teas don't do it as well. So I just wanted to clarify that in case anyone had any, just was a little unclear on the tea stuff. I would say if you're just starting out, just listen to the instructions, but just don't change anything. If you're brewing more tea, just more teaspoons is plenty. So we're going to start our tea. And there. 212, boiling water. Pour that bad boy in there. This one's going to get really dark. You're going to see it. Love some good Polarity. Bada bing. Cool. Right, 5 minutes. So I'm going to piggyback a little bit off of what I talked about last week on the topic of some video games. So the new Grand Theft Auto video game is coming out. And what that means is we're about to hear a lot of nonsense by politicians saying that video games cause violence. This is not the case. Video games, like, the last Grand Theft Auto came out 7 years ago. Nothing has changed since then. Everything is pretty, if anything, like, we're still having terrible things happen, mass shootings and all this horrible stuff, and this has nothing to do with video games. I mean, the point is, when a person plays a video game, they're trying to do what they wouldn't do in real life most of the time. So, like, for example, Genghis Khan killed 40 million people. Killed 40 million people. I think if he had a different way to take his aggression out, you know, maybe it wouldn't have gone over that way. You know, like, say you gave Genghis Khan a game like Skyrim. Big open world, you can pretty much do whatever you want. And you're like, listen, man, you can play this game for hours and hours, and you can kill and pillage and conquer this whole world. I think he would have been down. I think he would have been like, oh, I'm going to crack a beer, have my pipe, or whatever they used. The point is, like, Genghis Khan killed 40 million people, and he didn't have video games. He didn't even have a yo-yo. So, there's definitely no, correlation there. And on top of that, like, most people, I feel like, in reality, a person that's going to do bad things is going to do bad things. You know, I've seen friends of mine do horrible, horrible things in Grand Theft Auto. But they are the nicest people that would never hurt a fly. I'm just saying, like, if there's a person, they come home from work, say, and they had a really bad day, but they don't want to murder their coworkers like a psychopath would. So maybe they strap into a video game where they can get their aggression out by stealing a car and maybe going on a, rampage or something. I don't know. There's plenty of other games. The point is, there is no way. I mean, just because maybe someone who was gonna do a mass murder does play a video game, but you know what they also probably did? They probably tortured animals and stuff like that. So, it's going to be such a pain in the ass when this starts to break and you start hearing all this nonsense again. But because I think the real concern right now when it comes to video games is virtual reality, because that's where it's going to get weird. When people don't even know, like, eventually it's going to get so good that, like, you don't even know the difference. And they're going to start doing crazy stuff, trying to fly or something. And they're like, I'm in VR, and then it's not going to work out that way. Fortunately for me, I am pretty much an outcast when it comes to VR because I get horribly motion sickness, and I can't do it. I even get motion sickness on It's a Small World at Disney. Part of it might be because of just the motion sickness. The other part might be because that ride is terrifying. I feel like it's fine at first, but then towards the end, after you hear that song over and over again in pitch black, I start to feel nauseous, and it's not a good time. I think if you closed off, if you've been on It's a Small World, there's like, when you go around, it's light. I think if you just closed off that thing and just, you could interrogate people with that ride. Like a prisoner of war, they're not giving you information. I feel like they could just be like, oh, you're not going to talk? Okay, put them in It's a Small World, 30 rounds. And then they're just hearing that song over and over again in darkness. Like that, it would break them. It would break them. There'd be no, they would hear it, they would hear the lyrics like once in their language or whatever languages they understand. And then after that, by that like 10th round, they would know. They would know it. I would sing my deepest, darkest secrets. I think that instead of Disney, they should put a second It's a Small World at the Pentagon. Double the length and with way more languages, all the different languages. I don't know. That ride is not... I feel like people just go on it and you see those creepy dolls and I think it's just a nostalgic thing and you're like, oh, I'm supposed to like this? But I don't think anyone actually really likes It's a Small World because it's creepy. And there's got to be asbestos in there. All right, it's good. I'm not a big Disney fan. Okay, let's do this. Pu-erh tea. All right. Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention with Pu-erh tea is like after it is finished. So what they'll do is this one came loose in like loose leaves, but traditionally what it does is it comes in these like cakes, and I don't mean like a birthday cake, like these little like sometimes it's a ball, sometimes it's like a disc, and it's the tea and it's like compacted together. This is where that multiple infusions really comes, because usually you can't. Sometimes you could break a piece off, but usually you just throw like a giant disc in there and you just keep adding water and drinking it, and you get multiple infusions out of it. So that's one of my favorite. And those ones usually come very, very dark. So now you can see with this one, the Pu-erh tea definitely yields more of a darker brown compared to like a reddish brown that you would see from like a Golden Monkey. It was a little hard to see with that Earl Grey, so I would definitely try and get more of a bolder, pure black tea, so that way you could see that reddish difference. But this one definitely is more of a brown, I'd say. So, as always, you know what we do, we sniff. So, I definitely can smell the smoothness of the Pu-erh tea. I can smell the cream really stands out. There's like a little hint of strawberries. The cocoa doesn't really stand out in the smell. It's very hot. Sipping it, I can really taste the strawberries a lot more. I really enjoy this. I actually used to drink another strawberry Pu-erh, just a plain strawberry Pu-erh. It was very, very good. But that Pu-erh that was an aged Pu-erh. That had a little bit of stank to it. And now this one's not as mushroomy, but when you smell it, you definitely can smell the earthiness of it. It's not like a mushroomy, like, where it's off-putting. It's just like very earthy. Get a little bit of that hazelnut. The hazelnut's not super strong, but I definitely with the brewing I can taste a little bit. Yeah, really nice blend. Earthy, sweet. The cocoa nibs, I feel like the cocoa nibs give it more of a like just a touch of sweetness, as opposed to, it doesn't taste chocolatey, but it's definitely a very delicious flavor. Like just smooth, earthy, little bit of sweetness, touch of the fruitiness. I think out of all the teas I've gotten from Adagio, this is probably one of my favorite. Again, it's called Pu-erh Hazelberry. So, Pu-erh tea, we learned all about the Pu-erh tea, strawberries, cocoa nibs, hazelnut, cream, and it is absolutely delicious. And I could definitely I'd say the second steep, I could definitely get a couple steeps out of this, for sure. You can actually still see some of those coconut. No, that's a strawberry piece. It's definitely very different when it's wet. But you can it'll change the flavor a bit, because the cocoa is going to be in the first cup. More of the everything else will start to stand out after that. So once again, if you could just please like, share, and subscribe, and as always, have a good one.